We are going to shake things up a little bit with this panel. We've appreciated, as we've talked as a panel, we've appreciated the presentations that have been made. They have been very focused on systems and institutions and examples of how administrators are trying to make the dual mission model work. What we thought, as we were invited to participate in this, we were invited to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of why this matters on the ground as it relates to students, staff, faculty, what some of you might anticipate in terms of the implementation of some of these things. And again, just to remind us why it matters in relation to all students. So we'll be addressing issues of underrepresented populations and direct services there, faculty roles, pathways, and those types of things. My name is Kyle Reyes. I serve as the Vice President of Student Affairs here at Utah Valley University, and also the Chief Diversity Officer. Been here 15 years, and I'd like to invite each of the panelists to now introduce themselves. And then, again, it's going to be a little bit different because there's no presentations. I've got a series of questions, and then we're actually going to engage you all a little bit later for a little bit more of a group discussion. And so with that, Brenda.
Thank you, Kyle. So hi, my name is Brenda Marstellerkovalevskiy. I am the Associate Provost for High Impact Programs and Faculty Development at Weber State University. As part of this introduction, I would like to share with you that I think this dual mission institution incredibly important for all kinds of students. I think I myself would have benefited had I had the opportunity to attend a dual mission institution because I am coming to you as a first-generation college student, well, graduate now. And so that's one piece of my story, and maybe I'll tap back into that at some point in time. I also wanted to share with you just a little bit about why I think I'm at this table, if you will, or why I'm in this conversation. As I said, I'm responsible for high-impact programs at Weber State, and I'm not responsible for all high-impact programs, but I am leading a charge on campus to help our students become more engaged in even more high-impact educational experiences. And those high-impact educational experiences should be open and available to all students. A community college should absolutely have high-impact educational experiences. So should a regional institution. And we know that the benefits of some of those are retention of students, helping them create shorter paths to graduation, accomplish the goals that they want. And we know that those outcomes are even more substantial and important and significant for underrepresented students. Another reason why I think I'm at this table is because I'm also responsible for faculty development. And so just having to reflect a little bit on faculty roles at a dual institution, dual mission institution, they're pretty complex. They can be pretty complicated. And so I'm hoping that I can offer a perspective on what it's like to be a faculty member at a dual mission institution. And the third reason why I think I'm in this discussion is I'm responsible for, in my role, I'm also responsible for an effort that we have on campus around digital literacy, and I am also responsible for community development. So both of those roles put me in a position where I am interfacing with external partners to the university all the time. And so I hear what it is that they're hoping for, what it is that they need. And so I'm learning what our students need to have in order to not only be employable in a job, but eventually in a career. So that's why I think I'm at the table.
Many more reasons.
All right, so my name is Jessica Gilmore, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Community Outreach and Economic Development. If you forget that long name, you can just remember us as co-ed, where we're better together. All right, so now, see, you won't forget now. I would say that I am probably at the table today because of my background in community colleges. I started my career in higher ed a few years ago when I was working in what we called customized job skills training program, where we took students who were on public assistance and enrolled them in an intensive 12-week training program and taught job skills, life skills, reading and writing and math skills, and helped them with job placement, interviewing, cover letters, resume, all of that at the end of the program. It was a grant-funded program, so we were refunded in that grant by our placement rates. So we were very much tied to student outcomes and making sure that what we developed as curriculum was tied to the jobs that students would need at the end. I sort of fell in love with that job. I had happened into it by strange circumstances, fell in love with the job, fell in love with that population, and was lucky enough to only spend 1 year as adjunct before I was on a tenure track position at Highline College in the business technology department. So I taught for about 10 years in the community college sector in an area of applied education, workforce and technical education, where we had industry partners, advisory boards driving our curriculum, making sure that our placement rates were high and that our students had livable wage jobs. I enjoyed that position for about 10 years and did the faculty role and the department coordinator role, and in about 2008 was looking for the next sort of leadership position, and there was a little economy issue in 2008, so I ended up stepping out of higher ed in the teaching world and went to work in business for Pearson Education and was their director of customer experience, and was lucky enough to travel the country working with faculty all over the place at every kind of institution and helping faculty implement Pearson's technology products in the classrooms to increase the outcomes that they were getting with students. I found that I missed my owned campus, so ended up moving away from Pearson and moving to Eastern Washington, where I spent about 4 years at Walla Walla Community College. I think that my time at Walla Walla prepared me well for this unique role at UVU, because I was a dean of business and entrepreneurial programs and extended learning at Walla Walla. So I had oversight over academic programming and faculty and tenure and promotion and making sure that our curriculum was aligned with industry needs. But I also ran multiple businesses on our campus. So we had true applied learning in our cosmetology department, where we ran a full cosmetology salon open to the public 6 days a week. In our culinary department, we had a cafe on campus, a catering business, and one of the first ever food trucks in the country that went out and actually did food truck events. And then, uniquely enough, we also had an enology and viticulture program where we did grape growing and winemaking and had a winery on our campus. So I also sold wine for a living. And I was talking to our friend from the National Governors Association, and he was familiar with Walla Walla Community College. I said, yes, at every state event, I titled myself the Wine Sherpa, as I was bringing cases of wine to all the receptions from the community college, showcasing what our students did. In that role, I also had oversight of our non-credit education as well, so all of our community outreach. All of that work is very much aligned to what I do here at UVU. It's just that Walla Walla is a small rural campus in southeastern Washington, and UVU is this great, amazing university that has a unique opportunity to educate students at multiple levels with resources that I would have only dreamt about on my community college campus. The student outreach that we can do, the sports teams, the student wellness center. My goodness, our wellness center was the back room of some old non-renovated building with some donated treadmills. So having the resources of a full university behind us to make a difference for students regardless of where they are when they enter our university, I can't tell you what a privilege it is to serve. And I'm excited to talk more. We had a little lunch conversation, and we were all wishing that we could have just pressed play after that conversation, because there's so much that I think that we all share that we're excited to share with you.
Is this? Oh, there we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Adrian Andrews, and I am the Assistant Vice President for Diversity and Chief Diversity Officer at Weber State University. And this lovely, raspy voice you hear is courtesy of our springtime allergies in Utah. So it's not a cold, but it still doesn't sound great, and I still may cough. I am delighted to be on this panel and believe that one of the reasons I'm here is because I pestered folks at many levels, including Kyle, saying, don't you want me to talk about diversity and inclusion? Because that's a critical component to a dual mission institution and the folks that we seek to serve. And so I think that I got really lucky that folks said, okay, Adrian, we'll let you talk there. Otherwise, you'll be talking the whole time at your table or other people's tables. So I'm delighted in the work that I get to do. And one of the fundamental reasons I do believe I'm here is because of my true commitment and belief in the dual model system. And I say that as somebody who came back to Utah. I'm a native Utahn. I came back to Utah and thought I'd just be home for a little while and that I would get a job at Weber and work for a few years, and then I'd continue on my really cool life. And what happened was, when I landed at Weber, I landed in a place that had such a deep and compelling commitment to all students and serving every student where they were at to get them where they wanted to be. I didn't want to go anywhere else. And what I saw at the institution across levels, both horizontal and vertical, was commitment and belief that education can transform not only the community that we reside in or the state that we reside in, but the lives of the students that we have and their families. And I've been able to see that over and over again, whether it's teaching in a classroom space in political science or gender studies, or whether it's working in student services or student affairs, or serving as an administrator. And I believe that the message many of you need to hear, and that has been briefly touched upon and is critical to all of our success, is what diversity and inclusion means and how inclusive excellence in our dual mission institutions means that we rise all boats so that everyone improves and is successful. And sometimes when we think about the students that we're reaching out to and serving, whether it's at the community college level or the four-year regional, sometimes we fail to realize the impact of the decisions that we make based on the people who are sitting at the table, who are sitting in the administrative boardrooms, and the impacts those decisions have on students who may not be present, people who are not visibly represented or their voices are not heard. And so I love the work I do. I love the folks that I'm on this panel with. Really, you should have recorded our earlier conversation. It was very good. I hope we can give you at least a bit of that again now. But I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian, and the rest here. I have to say, as I was assigned this particular panel and I looked who was on there, I just got giddy, and so let's jump into it. One of my areas of research is access to higher education for historically and traditionally underserved and marginalized communities. And historically, such populations have been tracked or encouraged to start at community colleges. And again, personally, we all up here are great fans of community colleges. However, we know that oftentimes, and what the research suggests, is that sometimes it's not the strongest path for bachelor's degree attainment, especially for historically underserved students. So the question I have for the panel is, what does the dual mission approach offer to such a growing population of diverse students?
So I'm going to jump on that and say the first thing is it actually increases the likelihood that Black and Hispanic males will actually graduate with an associate's or bachelor's degree. And some of you may not be aware of the statistics, but it's startling to know that at the community college level, African American and Hispanic men graduate at the lowest rates, with African American men just trailing back so far behind that it's detrimental to the community. So when I think about the dual mission and what we can do for our underrepresented communities, whether that's economically, culturally, religious diversity, gender, all of these different aspects, what we can provide is not only an entree point into higher education. You may start with a certificate program, which is terrific. And if that's what you want, at a dual mission institution, I'm charged with helping make sure you get that. But I also believe I have a moral obligation to make sure that you're aware of all of the other opportunities that are present. And they may not be the things that you need today, but they might be the things you need 10 years from now. I'd shared with the panel that when I first started working at Weber, I worked in services for women students. And what I saw was, in many ways, a result of a Utah culture situation, which is a lot of women returning back to college after maybe a failed marriage or their family had sort of had some financial difficulties. These were oftentimes women who had been to school, had some credits, but it may have been 15 or 20 years since they'd been at the institution. We all know that means going back through those records and figuring out what counts and what's gone. Advising those students that an associate's degree has the power to transform not only their present but their future in terms of the possibility of future education is radical. I continued on in my path at Weber State, and I advise every student, including the student who comes to me and says, no, I came here to get a bachelor's degree. I encourage them to get an associate's degree, and it's because we don't know what life has in store for us. Our lives change radically. And when we lock in those credits, we are locking in our ability to transform our futures. Additionally, for our underserved communities, and in particular communities of color, once we are in an institution and recognize that we're not just welcome there, anybody can walk through the door. But once we're encouraged to participate and we recognize we belong and our voices are counted and people see us as an asset rather than a deficit, that's truly transformational and what we believe we can do next. And so perhaps I walk in thinking I'm going to get an associate's degree, and maybe that's to get a raise or to get a promotion at work. But suddenly I realize that I can stay at this place because it's streamlined. And it goes back to that comment yesterday about a seamless transition. And I can move forward and complete a bachelor's degree with faculty, staff, and peers who already know, respect me, and encourage me to be my best self. And at that same time, we have the luxury in a dual model to have peer mentors who've made it to their junior or senior year, who can come back and reflect with and work with those sophomores and those juniors, or sophomore and freshmen, I'm sorry, who are coming into our institution who aren't sure that they actually fit or are welcome. And I believe those are the things that are transformational, and those are our responsibilities.
So Kyle, I just want to focus a little bit on the open access aspect of a dual mission institution. I believe wholeheartedly that all students should be welcome at our institution. We're a regional institution. Our mission is to serve the students of our region, which means all students who want to be here. So open access is very important to me. So one of the things that I did when I first got here was to look at the students who we admitted into our class this last fall and to review what would happen if we succumbed to some of the pressure to control growth or to be a little more selective to raise up that university status. So looking at the 7,000 some students that we admitted into the institution this fall, had we applied even modest admissions criteria, just very modest admissions criteria, those students who would not have been admitted into the university, of those, 64% of them would have fallen into underrepresented categories. That's a shocking number. 64% of the students who would not have been here on our institution had we instituted modest admissions criteria would have been from underrepresented populations. That means students who are over 25, female students, minority students, first-generation students. Those are the very students that transform our classrooms into rich learning environments. Those are the students who make a difference for the others in their classroom and make those conversations so enjoyable. If we did not allow them into our institution, first of all, would not be the same. The experience of our students would be diminished, and the economy of our region would be lessened. Not to mention, when we allow those students in, we transform the economic vitality of our region and the earning potential of those individual families. We physically make a difference in the success rate of those families. That's our job. So I will be a staunch protector of open admissions, clearly, right? I will always fight for open admissions because our job is to serve our region, and our region is more inclusive than just those who obtain a certain score on a test.
And I'm sorry, I have to piggyback. I'm sorry, Brenda. I'm so grateful that you said this because I just want to draw to all of your attention what the demographics of this state are going to look like in the next set of decades. And they're not going to look the way they've looked historically. And that means you're going to see more people that look like me, more people that look like Kyle, more people who identify as Hispanic or Latinx in our community. And what that means is if we look at those numbers that Jessica just shared about who wouldn't be going to college, then we need to consider what we'd be losing economically, developmentally, socially. The costs are unconscionable. And if I have to get to you through your pocketbook for you to understand the value of dual mission, I'll do it that way. My preference is not to have to. But the reality is, we can't afford to practice racism without being racist. And when we have policies that are institutionalized and a part of our structure that frame out a particular set or group of people from getting the higher education that they need and deserve, then we're doing a disservice to ourselves.
So, yes, give it up. Right on. So I'll add just a smidge because there's not much left to add, really. I couldn't agree with both of you more, truly. When I was thinking about, what does the dual mission have to offer our underrepresented students, I started thinking about this a little bit through that faculty lens and through that high impact lens. And our students deserve the best education that we can possibly give them. Every student deserves that. And that's what we offer at an open enrollment institution. And so those high impact educational experiences, they are meant to transform the lives of students. Our data show us and tell us that they transform the lives of underrepresented students more than the lives of the students who have had access traditionally, historically, to higher ed. When I look at some of the data around community engaged learning in particular at Weber State, what we know is that the students who are engaged in the community, underrepresented students included, they are 2.25 times more likely to be retained at the institution. That is a win for us. We are maintaining assets, if you will. Not that I want to call students assets, right? I mean, but we are keeping assets at our institution. And that means that we have more of an opportunity to transform their lives. So incredibly important. The other point that I would like to raise is the faculty piece. Again, a dual mission institution. It's a beautiful thing, really. You have this mission where you have community college goals, you have students coming into your doors. Yes, I heard in earlier panels, it creates this continuum of skills in the classroom that are, it's very broad and wide and can be very challenging, but it is an opportunity. And for faculty, faculty are engaging those students in a wide variety of ways, and that means that they're engaging all students. So faculty who are doing research, who are engaged in a research agenda, are now exposing community college, typical community college students to this research agenda. And suddenly those students are seeing something in themselves that they may not have seen before. So the dual mission institution has so much to offer all of our students, but I would argue especially our underrepresented students, or the students who would be like me, first gen.
Let's stay with the faculty for just a second. You mentioned the faculty, Brenda, and there's quite a few movements in terms of what are the roles of a faculty member. In fact, recently I was reporting that we were at an academic affairs retreat with Senior Vice President Jeff Olson, and we talked with a few of the deans about this changing role of the faculty. I get a chance to teach in the School of Education here at UVU, and I teach 4 different courses. I teach a class called Multicultural Understanding. And my students have asked, they've said, Dr. Reyes, it sounds like you expect me to now be a teacher, a nurse, a social worker, a nutritionist, a coach, a surrogate parent, an outreach specialist, and all this. I just signed up to teach. And we have some pretty robust conversations about the changing nature of 21st century education in the classroom and the needs of the students nowadays. So in terms of faculty roles within different institutions, there seems to be two prevailing movements among faculty. On one hand, faculty groups at a number of institutions revisiting RTP, ranked tenure and promotion policies and guidelines to give greater weight to things like inclusive and diverse pedagogy, community engagement, advisement, and other groups of faculty working to protect commitments to research, scholarly activities, and sort of grant support. At a dual mission institution, what are or should be the roles of the faculty member?
Can I start?
Yes.
So you nailed it. It's broad, right? And faculty are wearing many hats. The role of the faculty member has changed over time. If you think historically, professors professed, stood at the podium, imparted knowledge, soak it up, everyone, right? I mean, that was the expectation. It's evolved over time from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. So faculty are now expected to do far more guiding kinds of practices, if you will, than just standing up and pontificating. And so that involves far more than just the, well, let me engage you in this really active learning activity right here, right? Very important, because I have learning outcomes attached to it, but you have to be the guide on the side for a wide variety of things. Might be about financial aid, might be about mental health, might be about what club or activity you might want to pursue, or leadership role. I mean, you're a guide on the side for a wide variety of things. So that's really important to recognize that this transition and this evolution is occurring over time. It becomes even more fundamental at a dual mission institution. Institutions, Weber State, very interested in hiring faculty and staff who see themselves as holistic educators. They're not going to just stand behind the podium and impart knowledge and say, good luck, I hope you get what I'm telling you. They are truly holistic educators. Do we have some work to do on our hiring practices and whatnot? Absolutely, positively. I'm not suggesting we've got this down, but it is at the forefront of our brains. We're really trying to be thoughtful about how do we get the faculty and the staff on our campuses who are most passionate about student success. And will indeed be this guide on the side. They will be a mentor. I'm not gonna name these roles in terms of particular occupations the way that you just did, Kyle, but when I was thinking about this, they're not just teachers, they're mentors, they're advocates. They're part of a team of advocates, of other educators on campus advocating for students. They're assessors and evaluators, and they're researchers. And they're doing research in a variety of different disciplines, but they're also doing research on the scholarship of teaching and learning, because they're trying to improve their teaching and the learning that they're trying to help their students achieve. I'm going to suggest that they're innovators. Faculty are innovators, and they're expected to be innovators because they're expected to not only collect that data and that understanding of what the heck is going on in this classroom, and are my students really learning what I'm expecting them to learn, but now I have to innovate and create and think about, well, what is the best way to teach these students? What is the best way to practice inclusive excellence, this language that isn't just buzzwords. It's truly about how do I create an inclusive learning environment. So they have to be pioneers. At dual mission institutions, faculty have to be pioneers. At Weber State, we are asking our faculty to create a learning environment that upholds 4 pillars of student success. An environment that creates a sense of belonging for every student, whether that student looks like you or not, whether that student has the same background as you, whether they are a community college, whether they are pursuing a 4-year degree and beyond. Sense of belonging. We're expecting our faculty to create engaging learning environments. That means learning environments inside and outside of the classroom. So yes, engaging in the classroom, but faculty need to be accessible and engaged with students outside of the classroom, pushing down the walls of the classroom so that learning occurs elsewhere. Third pillar, we are asking our faculty to provide guidance and support to all of our students. So we have this coaches certification training, and we're encouraging faculty to go through this coaches certification training. We're encouraging all of our student affairs educators to do the same. And they're learning about financial aid, and they're learning about the wellness center, and they're learning about all of these resources on campus so that they can provide the guidance and support that the students need, not just about their career choice or their academic pathway, but it's a holistic approach. The fourth pillar, we are asking our faculty to absolutely, positively develop the skills and the knowledge sets in our students that they're going to need in order to be successful in the 21st century work environment. And that hasn't changed all that much, in the sense that that's always been a responsibility of a faculty member, right? Impart your knowledge, skills, make sure that your students are walking away proficient. But we are starting to think about that in a different way, so that we are helping our students be able to articulate what those skills are, what that knowledge is that they have, to future employers in ways that we haven't before. So little credentials, nano credentials, mini credentials, in these stackable, kinds of ways. We are rethinking the way in which we're asking our faculty to teach and demonstrate that they've imparted that knowledge and that their students are proficient. So we're asking a lot of our faculty members. At a dual mission institution, that faculty role has become incredibly complicated. Not just the teaching aspect, the holistic approach. I'll stop there and maybe chime in a little later.
So I want to just touch on sort of institutional pieces around faculty, right? So when we do faculty recruiting at a dual mission institution, we have to make sure that we're recruiting faculty who are committed to our mission, and that they truly, at their core, support all student success. Not just a slice of students they're most interested in working with, all student success. That means we have to maybe think about how we're writing faculty job descriptions. We have to think about the requirements that we're asking of faculty when they come to an institution. Do they really need to graduate from some prestigious institution and have 15 years of teaching experience and have X amount of publications? If they don't have the other piece, I would say we're recruiting the wrong folks in our classroom. I'm happy to have all those things as long as they also are committed to our mission, they're committed to teaching, and they're committed to all student success. So that's core of the core for me when it comes to faculty. As an institution, then, we have to make sure that our policies and procedures support access, student success, and completion. We're higher ed. We're good at policy, right? And we're really good at creating policies and procedures and wayfinding. That's not easy. You're a first-gen student or an underrepresented population, and coming onto a college campus in the first place feels daunting, and then we start using words like bursar's office. I think the only reason why my kids know what the bursar's office is because Hamilton, right? Other than that, how would they know what that is? Let alone admissions and registrar and orientation or syllabus or all of these other academic words that we're throwing out there, not to mention all of the policies. you have to register by this day, and then you have to do this by that day, and our curriculum policies that faculty have to do in order to change our curriculum. All of those things have to be just scrutinized to make sure we're not creating our own barriers and making it harder for students to succeed in our institutions. Then I have one little caution for us. So we've talked a lot at this institution, or at this conference, about the things that dual mission institutions do. They create opportunities for inclusion and making sure that we're open access institution. And then we also have this university mindset where we want to make sure that we're serious. I want to caution us not to pit those two things together. Serious does not come at the cost of inclusion. Inclusion does not prevent serious. Right? We can be both at all levels. We have serious community college instruction. I don't know of a 1,000 level course that isn't serious. We're not creating curriculum to be not serious. We are serious in every class. All instruction that we do is leading students to serious credentials. And we do it in a way that's inclusive to ensure access for all. They're not pitted against each other. One isn't assigned to the community college and the other to the university. We are both always. And I want to challenge us to use our language carefully to make sure that when we use those words, we use them for all.
Thank you. I'm tempted to just continue asking questions, but I think we're going to shake it up just a little bit. We have a few more questions. While it's fresh on your mind, these two big topics, inclusion and diversity, and the role of faculty, will you just, at your tables, some people in here hate this engagement part of it, so if you want to check out for the next 5 seconds, you can. But if you can just turn to a neighbor, what was something that was set up here that sparked something for you you'll have to take back to your campus at some point, either related to diversity, inclusion, or the role of faculty members? So if you just take 2 minutes, turn to a neighbor at your tables. If the entire table has 2 people, or Jeff Olson, you might want to join this table right over here. Go ahead and just engage. 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. Quick thoughts. If folks in the audience here, if you could speak with your professorial voices, we would just love to have some comments from 2 or 3 tables. Just what is something that was sparked here by this conversation that you're now thinking about to take back to your campus? Please, Craig.
My name is Craig Tulene. I don't have to use my professorial voice. I'm the Faculty Senate President here at Utah Valley University. And the whole conference I've been thinking about something that showed up as one line on one slide in one of these presentations, and that was alluded to because, especially the way Brenda put it, of the ask that's being made of faculty in what is a very demanding but very important role, the dual model. The line that was on that slide was shared governance. I don't know how many people are here that are only faculty, that aren't faculty that are also chairs or department or deans or an administration. But the issue of shared governance needs to be considered, because if you don't have the faculty with you, it doesn't matter how good of an idea the dual model is. If you don't have the faculty with you, it doesn't matter how good your ideas are about serving student needs. It won't happen.
Anything else, Craig, on that?
So, Kyle, I want you to solve that problem.
Done.
Can we just respond to that just a smidge?
Please.
So I couldn't agree more. Shared governance is absolutely essential, and having the faculty on board, critical. I think that's in part why Jessica's point is so incredibly important. We as an institution have to commit to hiring the folks who are committed to this mission. I was thinking about, the folks in the other states who are talking about how this is a consolidation, and so the dual mission is something that's sort of new, right? They're trying this because they need to. Enrollment has dropped. They've hired a lot of faculty members with perhaps a different paradigm than what Weber State or maybe UVU has hired. We've had the benefit of growing up, if you will, as a dual mission institution at Weber State. I have to say, I feel incredibly happy that we've had the benefit of growing up. Does that mean that all of our faculty members are on board with this dual mission? No way. But the vast majority of them are, because they're coming to this institution because they know that it is about teaching. It is about learning. That is at the heart. It is students, students, students. And so I think if we put students at the center, shared governance comes, right? If our decisions are about what's best for the student, well, then faculty are going to have a role to play, and they're going to have a voice as our administrators, as our staff members in every part of the institution. But your point is so well taken. Shared governance is critical. How we get there is an excellent question, but I think if we leverage the culture of the institution, the history of the institution, which I think UVU and Weber State were in perhaps a more privileged position to do that, we'd be better off.
Other comments or thoughts? Oh, right here. Yes, Senator.
Sorry, I have to jump into this.
Please.
And I want to draw off Brenda's comment. And actually you have to revisit this periodically as well. And I want to say that when I was in the presidency, and I followed Paul, and we began our own kind of strategic planning process, that renewal process, we dared to ask the question, what about the role of the dual mission role, a community college and a regional university? Is that something we should continue or not? And we did this kind of thing with clickers, and we did the opening school breakfast, and Paul would said to me, Ann, you don't ask any question you don't know the answer to, right, Paul? Right. But I did it anyway. I said, I am going to break Paul's rule here. Because I felt like we needed to decide. It was like you need to kind of ask that question periodically, and it needs to be kind of the organic development and commitment to that across your campus, both your faculty and staff. You should be asking both the faculty and staff that question. And fortunately, that's what people said. That's who we are, and it's who we want to be and who we want to continue to be. And then I could use that to go back to say we reaffirmed that as a campus. So I can't say how important I think that engagement process is and bringing everybody on board. And then you hire to it, but it's got to be deeply embedded in the values and the culture of the organization. So sorry, I just had to add that.
Thank you.
Senator, thank you for the example. Any other thoughts about, did anybody discuss the diversity and underrepresented populations conversation, or have a thought about what you might be taking back to your campus related to that, or again, even with faculty roles? Because I heard every table talking, so I didn't know. Right here, thanks.
Thanks. One of the things we were talking about at lunch at the table is, do you think that sometimes our imperatives coming from the legislature and other places are in tension with our inclusivity, our goal, with our dual mission? For instance, we know that our populations, we will simply retain them. It's just a fact of life. We will simply retain them at a lower rate than research institutions. How does that impact performance funding from the state? Those kinds of questions. So is there that tension? And if there is, what do we do about it? How do we live, our ethical, our philosophical commitments in a bottom line kind of world? Thanks.
Money and outcomes are always in tension, right? Yeah, of course, there's always tension. Policy can always create tension with what we hope the outcome is. And I don't ever believe that people intentionally say, we're going to create this policy to make it harder for student success. I don't ever think that's the root of anything, which is great. It's a nice place to start from the positive. But it's how we help our legislators, how we work with USHE as a system, how we work with our sister institutions to language what it is that we're doing to influence that policy. And I think that we all have to be involved in that, whether it's our neighbor who's on the city council, or we're involved in policy making at the institutional level, or you're in a position to be involved in policy making at the legislative level. It's making sure that we tell the stories so that those who are making the policy know the impact of the policy that they're making. And that when it comes out, and it's not perfect, because it's not always perfect, right? There's a process that we go through to write any policy, whether it's on campus or legislative policy, and there's compromises made. And sometimes we don't see the unintended consequences of those compromises until it's enacted. Then let's speak up. As a group, we are all here seeking very similar student success stories. So let's make sure we tell those. And when those success stories are in jeopardy, we need to make sure that that's clear so that we can influence the revision.
I was struck by something that Joel said earlier, and I've heard him say it now twice in two different settings, that our success should be measured based on who we let in and not rather than who we keep out. I think certain metrics privilege and incentivize the selective nature of within higher education, because opt-in bias and all the other sort of levers that we've talked about over the years. I still remember when President Holland came on board in 2009, one of those very first conversations that he engaged with his leadership team was, folks, we know the levers to increase completion rates like this. We're just not willing to pull those right now, right? And we have to have a conversation. And where's our commitment to this dual mission? Because immediately, right out of the gate, I joined his staff 2 months after he started, and people, quite literally, Linda Macon and others will know this, we're expecting him to have UVU become, well, this is what you got to do to be in U.S. News and World Report. This is what you got to do with this. And all of a sudden, I was like, whoa. And so what Joel said earlier, president of Red Deer College, that resonates with me as a very ethical way to look at funding. And if you want to talk about performance-based, well, performance-based as it relates to the most vulnerable and underserved of our communities, I think is something that we need to take into consideration at a heavier clip than we currently are. Adrian, what were you going to say?
I was just going to share that we can't underestimate the difference between intention and impact. And I hope at the bottom of my heart, at the core of my being, that the intent is always for our students to succeed. And if that's the place that we operate from, then when we learn the impact is other than we had anticipated, then we can self-correct. We can make the policy changes that we need to. But that does go back to telling the story, and that does go back to, I think, 2 or 3 other people mentioned social justice and what equity and equality looks like in our education systems. And we have to ask ourselves, is that who we are? Is that what we do? And if it is, then it's an easy correction to make. It's much harder when it's not who we really are, even if it's who we say we are.
I'm going to go to another question here, and this is one that has to do with pathways. The notion of educational pathways has been promoted for decades in various contexts for diverse purposes. Some of the points of debate surrounding educational pathways are the underlying tensions between perceptions of flexibility versus efficiency, tracking students into linear paths versus allowing for changes in interests and passions, and of course the integrity of the discipline versus administrative push for graduation rates. What is or should be the future of educational pathways, and where do dual mission institutions fit into that conversation?
I'll take that one, because as my colleagues in the room know, I love the word pathways. They all tease me because I use it a lot. Those of you who haven't read the book by Thomas Bailey, Davis Jenkins, and Shauna Smith-Jagger, Redesigning America's Community Colleges, may be less familiar with the language around pathways, but it's a great book. I've had the chance to hear most of them speak as well. And what they're helping us see is allowing students the ability to explore and make choices without limiting their pathway in the end, right? So creating educational pathways that, if I can use two hands here, have the broadest funnel to start so students can explore without jeopardizing that degree, and take some classes and figure out what pathway they want to be on while they're doing that, and not get off path because we've made those pathways so narrow and said from day one on this campus you have to take these classes or you'll never graduate. Because when they deviate from that, they're unsuccessful already. Davis Jenkins will tell the cereal aisle story, and this one resonates with me because I resemble this story. You know, you go into the cereal aisle and there's O's and there's Flakes and there's Bran and there's sugar cereal and there's Cookie Crisp. There's healthy granola that isn't really healthy. I ate granola for a week in college and gained 5 pounds thinking it was healthy. There's hot cereal and cold cereal, and there's all these choices that you are literally paralyzed. I cannot tell you the last time I bought cereal, but I go down that aisle every week in the grocery store. But I can never make a choice. When we don't help students make good choices, they end up leaving the aisle without a degree. That's not what I want. I need educational pathways that help students get to a credential so that when they do have to get off the pathway and go to work, or life happens and their schooling is interrupted, they have a credential that doesn't disappear. If we only have a collection of credits, those credits are reviewed. We talked about that they're picked apart, and some of those credits no longer qualify, and that student goes backwards and has to start making choices in that cereal aisle again, and we are in danger of losing them. That degree or credential, because we've created a clear pathway, is something that they will always have. You can't take it away from them once they earn it. Even if they've been gone for 10 years and they come back, they have that degree as their starting point. So for me, Pathways shows up in different ways on all sorts of different campuses. I'm from Washington, and in the Community and Technical College area in Washington, there's 34 different campuses. There's 34 different ways for those campuses to operationalize Pathways. And that's okay, because each college has a unique way of viewing their collection of courses and organizing their departments and into schools or career clusters or however they're going to do it. But at the end of that pathway is certification or degree and helping students get there further, faster. So as long as that's the goal of Pathways, then Pathways are going to benefit both us and our students.
And I love the ability for a pathway to split. Yeah. I love that I could maybe be a nursing student, and I think I'm going down that pathway and I've taken these classes, and then something happens and that's just not going to work out for me. It's just not going to happen. But instead of saying, well, I guess I'm out of luck, all of those things I've done can actually point me to new opportunities and options that can continue to transform my life, that make the education I've received transferable in ways that I couldn't imagine when I started, because the only thing I could see was nursing. And that may not be because I wasn't getting great advising. It could just be because all I can see is nursing. And again, that's part of the magic of the dual mission, is I might walk in thinking this is the thing I want to do, or this is the thing I can do, or this is the only thing available to me. And suddenly, I'll realize there are all of these other pieces to a puzzle that is much bigger than I could have ever imagined. And so I agree, Pathways can be so powerful, but we have to do a much better job about helping students understand where those pathways can go and what other opportunities that they lead to. And that could be stackable credentials, that could be an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, going on to graduate study. But we have to help make sure that that information is clear and available, and that we all sing the same song when we share it. Because that's the other piece for our students, is not getting the same information or not having clarity of message.
And faculty involvement, I'm going to pass it to you here, because Pathways start, right, in the world of faculty. Faculty own the curriculum. So I've seen colleges make the mistake of instituting Pathways on an institution instead of with an institution.
so I wasn't going to pick up on faculty exactly. However, I can. And connect it to the point that I was going to make, which I think these pathways, you're right, they're critical, but they should be co-developed. They should be industry informed. This is a tough one for faculty to be thinking about, co-creating curriculum with industry. I'm just going to tell you, I mean, we've got academic freedom. This is what we do. It's our specialty. We create curriculum. You're asking, Kyle, what is the future of educational pathways? Well, I think the future is co-created pathways that are industry informed. I'm not saying completely constructed, but absolutely informed. And so there's a paradigm shift that needs to occur among our faculty, at our institutions, and I think dual mission institutions can lead out on that paradigm shift. The other point that I'd like to make, I'm sorry, I know you're gearing up there, is, and I'll pick up on a comment that was made at an earlier panel, I think that personalized education, this notion of meeting students where they're at, competency-based education, I think that's the future. I think that's where we're headed, this personalized education. We need students who are coming in, I don't care whether it's with foreign language experience and they can test out of things, or whether they have military experience, or they have a passion for homeless youth, right? How are we recognizing what it is that students are already bringing to us? How are we credentialing that? At the moment, I'm not so sure that higher ed's really very open. I think dual mission institutions are the ground, the fertile ground for those conversations, to see how can we start to recognize what it is that students already have when they get to us. How do we build on that? How do we give them credit, if credit is the coin of the realm? How do we measure the competencies that they already have when they come, and build on that? That will make a huge difference, and I think it will make a huge difference for underrepresented students. I mean, I truly do. If we can say to them, you're coming to us with a lot of assets already that we're recognizing, and then we build on that. So,
I'm sorry, Brenda, but recognizing the funds of knowledge that students arrive with is transformational, not only for the other peers in the classroom spaces, but also for that student who's showing up, who maybe didn't believe that this was a place they could show up to. In addition, that's a culture shift for faculty, staff, and administrators to recognize that students arrive with assets that maybe we have not traditionally seen as assets because we haven't valued them that way, not because the value hasn't always been there. And that means transforming our deficit sort of frameworks that we operate from in a default. And that's got to change. And I think the dual mission institution is the perfect place to see that transformation occur.
Let's go one step further. Talk about articulating our non-credit coursework. Right? Not only do we have life experience that we bring to the table when we're a non-traditional student, particularly who's been out in the workforce, but what if you need, you want to go get your SHRM certification or a PMP certification, and it's an add-on to a degree that increases the likelihood that you're going to be employable at a higher rate, but it's outside the curriculum. How are we looking to articulate our non-credit certification, industry certifications, micro-credentialing, to stack those into degree pathways, because we know they make a difference for students' earnings, which then in turn feeds into our economy, which is the whole reason we have a regional institution. So we have to start looking at things creatively, and it goes back to, as dual mission institutions, we have to carefully craft our policies and procedures to support the thing we are saying we're doing. If we're going to be a dual mission institution, we have to look at learning the whole spectrum, whether that means on the job and you brought it with you while you're on your pathway to the degree, or it means you took a weekend intensive class on some specialized certification area, and we're going to couple that in and help you move further faster to that degree.
One recent experience I had, there was a lot of analogies, when talking about pathways. So there's off-ramps, on-ramps, there's different ladders and whatnot, pathways, pipeline, tapestry. So the one that worked the best most recently for me was in a recent parent meeting. I visited a parent group and was talking to parents and students about this idea of stackable credentials, okay? But I'm gonna channel LeVar Burton for just a second and saying the gamification of the United States, or the gamification of the world right now, is where the students are at. So I said, parents, can you imagine, those of you who've ever played video games, because once upon a time I used to play video games, and you would get to a certain, if in any sort of race, you would get to a certain checkpoint. And if after that race of skiing or racing, you died in the game, when you started again, you could only go back to that checkpoint. Meaning you wouldn't start at the beginning. You started at where you got to that next checkpoint. You leveled up. And it was so fascinating because for years I had always used this, hey, there's these different ladders and pipeline. But as soon as I said level up, the parents are like, oh, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. The students were like, so you mean if I get an associate's degree, I can't slide back further than that? And I'm like, yes, that. Can I embroider that on some T-shirt and have that go to everyone? Because it really is just that idea of you cannot slide back. So the examples that we were sharing at lunch, I was so moved by when you were saying somebody stepping away, coming back and then saying, you know what, my faculty now don't want to count those credits from the faculty 10 years ago. But instead, if you say, I have an associate's, and you say, great, let's start from there. What a powerful message. And it's not necessarily associate's path, bachelor's path. It's going through and leveling up along the way in a way that makes sense for students. And so really powerful. Thank you for sharing those. We have one more question, but this is how I'd love to do it is I'm going to ask it to the group here, but would love your input as well, because I think there's some folks in the room who probably have experience with this question, President Holland, who may want to chime in on this, President Holland. So here's the question. Skeptics of the dual mission approach have suggested that one of the two missions will eat the other. In other words, the desire for excellence, quality, and prestige will eventually eat the access mission, or the desire for inclusion, access, and opportunity will eventually eat the quality of education. We've already heard some commentary about this in the other panels, but I'd like to ask you a related question to student stories and the mission tension. So, what types of students really do benefit from the dual mission approach? And is it really possible to offer an education that meets the needs of such a diverse group of students in terms of college preparation, socioeconomic status? Or is this really the unicorn of higher education right now? Thoughts?
So I've been struggling, how to language this, but we can't separate the community college from the university. If we do, it ends up that you have the community college here and then your other schools or colleges along the way, and we create silos where this community college is somebody else's mission. And it may be a part of our institution, but it belongs to that silo. We have to take that community college and turn it horizontally so that it's the foundation of every school and college. So as you say, it's the leveling up. We have to create our vision on this institution so that every person that a student touches along the way of their journey knows that they're going through the community college on their pathway to whatever endpoint it is. But if we leave it over here on the side, it gets abandoned, right? And it's easy for individuals to say, that's not my area. So I feel like we have to just turn it across all areas.
I don't know if I visualize it that way. Okay. And I think the reason why, I like the leveling up, I like the foundation, I'm there, I'm with you, I'm seeing it. But I think it just has to be at the core. It just has to be at the center of everything that we do. So I guess I'm more of a sunburst vision. I have more of a sunburst vision. I'm not really sure, but it's at the core of everything that we do, that community college mission. And really, quite honestly, it's probably our core themes is coming back to my mind, and I'm pointing to Ann, Senator Milner. Ann. That's what you would prefer, right? Because our university went through an incredible process, and it was really quite awesome, where we really had to be thoughtful about who we are and what we're doing. It was this moment of, are we embracing this dual mission or are we not? And we decided to, and our core themes reflected: access, learning, community. Dual mission is all three of those: access, learning, community, and they intersect. And at the center, it's students. It's the student and student learning. And so for me, I think it's more, it's a sunburst with the student in the center that says, whatever that student's looking to achieve, that's what we're about. That's what we need to be doing, right?
And I love both of these things because I see both of those as viable options. In my mind, it's inextricably tied to education, and that our goal is to make sure people have access to education and learning, and that they are able to develop a community or become a part of the community that we are co-creating together. And to do that, it requires all of the faculty, staff, and administrators to ask themselves, how do I see myself getting that job done? And that's, I think, the fundamental issue for a dual mission institution, is faculty not seeing their role in the dual mission. So by asking everyone either how do you see yourselves, or these are the ways that I think you could see yourself as a part of this, that transforms everything. But it also requires that we turn back to the community and we look at the relationships we have there. One of the coolest things about a dual mission institution is that the community is our lab. And that means the learning takes place on our campuses as well as in our communities. And we know for communities of color, answering or resolving community issues is one of the greatest ways to retain students of color. And so as faculty, when we create those opportunities to solve wicked problems for the people's lives that we live with and the communities we live in, we not only improve learning and growth and retention, but we actually create new economies of scale because the possibilities are endless. And we create entrepreneurs. And that's something that we haven't been talking about. We create entrepreneurs because of a dual model, where I saw myself here, but suddenly the potential is endless. And we can do that if we turn on our side, or if we start at the center as a sunburst, or we're a wheel and I'm in the center of the wheel and everything else is the spokes. Whatever it needs to be for you, yeah, let it be that thing, as long as it serves the student. And I think that it can.
Can I just ask those that have been on previous panels, or those that have not, going back to the question I didn't ask as part of that question though, but how do you keep one side, so to speak, and again, I know we're not trying to keep this a binary, but there are those pulls. How do you keep them from eating one another in terms of those missions? And I think Red Deer College asked this same question recently as it relates to faculty, but thoughts on that? Please.
I have a question more than a comment.
Of course.
Do you all have your faculty members teach on both sides? So if you have a professor of English, they teach on both sides? Can you repeat that? Sorry. My question was, do you have faculty members who teach on both sides rather than be exclusive to one side of the house?
So I'm going to answer that as there is one house, there are no sides. That's the way that we think about it. Welcome to Weber State University. We're happy to have you here. Let's get you into the classes that you need to be successful, right? And so it's not sort of like, oh, those are the community college students and the community college faculty. We don't do that. It's truly integrated. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, I showed up at Weber State 23 years ago, faculty member in sociology, first job out of grad school. And I went to graduation and I'm like, hey, why are some of these students in black gowns and some of them are in purple? And the faculty member sitting next to me said, "Oh yeah, the purple gowns, they're the associate's degrees." What? We do that here? Like, I'm not kidding, I didn't know. You walk with an associate's degree? Yeah, that's what we do here. Well, how cool is that? Right? I mean, and that was kind of my, well, how cool is that? And it's just what we do. So the students at graduation, I'm saying, welcome, it's one house. And now I'm telling you we distinguish between purple and black gowns. But the fact of the matter is, that is a way of saying, hey, you've earned this credential. We value it. We think it's important that you walk, you get recognized for that. It's locked into place, you're good. Now, if you need an off-ramp and you're doing something else for a little while, and then you come back on, you're set. We got you. Come on back. So, sorry, I'm digressing from your question, but it's one house.
Yeah. Faculty here teach within their discipline area, teach at all levels of their discipline area. The pathways are a collection of courses that lead to the outcomes necessary to achieve the degree. We don't distinguish whether a 1,000-level class is only a community college class, because they're all courses that we collect together to get to outcomes to obtain that degree. So, all one.
Just looking at the time, I realize we just have a few minutes left, and so I'm actually just going to cut this and ask each of our panelists to say a final word, if they would, to wrap this up. Who would like to start?
Well, okay. I can't tell you how pleased I am to see this room full of people willing to grapple with the issue of a dual mission institution, to consider what diversity and inclusion and inclusive excellence can look like in your campus, on your campus, or in your community. What I can tell you is it's a difficult process, but it's one in which there are unlimited value. And so I would encourage you, as you would do any sort of transformation on your campus, because the folks sitting up here, we kind of got lucky. Dixie's going through their growing pains right now, and so their story may be a little bit different. But again, we're a little bit lucky. And we might be lucky in resources that some of you don't have, but it doesn't matter if you have $1 million or if you have $10. If you have commitment from faculty, staff, and your community partners, leverage those relationships, because they can transform everything else that's going to happen on your campus. And that's for all your students. We do none of our students a service by making sure that there aren't people at the table. The world just simply does not work that way anymore. We have to create spaces that are inclusive, engaging, and encouraging, and that recognize the assets and the values and the experiences that people bring to us. And we have to leverage those things to get them the education they need to continue to do more. That can be at a certificate level, an associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, or further on. Right now, I'm in my PhD program. I'm 44. I'm about to be a first-time mom. I'm adopting. And let me tell you, I wish that I had gotten my PhD years ago. But I'm like the students that we talk about. I got on the freeway. I'm driving down it. I picked up some education, and I got off. And I came back, and I collected some more. I collected 5 times, folks, and I'm now on my sixth part of the journey, right? But that means that if we're not accessible, if we're not welcoming and inclusive and prepared to help students succeed, it doesn't matter what we say. It matters what we do. And I know that you can all do this work, because I'm seeing your heads, I'm seeing your faces. You can't show up to something like this just because you're out of town for a day and a half. You show up to something like this because you're committed to making improvements for the people that you serve. And because we are regional institutions, we serve everyone. Thank you.
So I would just say thank you to all of my colleagues who I've worked with over the years, because I'm privileged. I fell into the world of higher ed and fell in love with this world. We have this unique opportunity to transform the lives of our students every day. Nobody else gets to do that. We have the privilege to hold their futures collectively with them and help make a difference in their lives. And that could mean the difference between homelessness and having a home. It could mean the difference of, clothes for kids as they go to school. It could mean the difference of their children attending college because they did. We hold that power. That is such a privilege. And I'm thankful every day to be able to do the work and to be able to work with colleagues like all of you, because, boy, you're smart. And like Adrian, I'm also getting my doctoral degree later, because I stepped on and off the educational train through the way and, had kids and a life and did all sorts of other things. And I'm thankful to have the support of colleagues who will commiserate with me on this path. And I'll be glad to be done, right? But I'm just thankful that it's given me the opportunity to do the work. And then mostly I'm thankful to have been given the opportunity to be here. I never weirdly saw myself at a university. I've always attended universities myself when I got my degrees, but I've always worked at community college. So this privilege to extend the opportunity that we have to transform lives to a larger group of students was never something I knew that I'd be able to do. So thanks.
I'll keep my comments very short. One of the things that I've heard today is put students at the center, and I've said it myself up here, but I've heard it on every panel today in particular. So let's not forget that this is about the students. And dual mission, it's where it's at. It's where we're headed. It's the future of higher education. I'm excited to be in this room with all of you folks who are thinking about this very same thing. I kind of feel like we're pioneers, like we're kind of innovators, we're kind of on the cutting edge. I think we're the envy of where folks want to be. And we should probably leverage that a little bit collectively. So thanks for the opportunity, and I appreciate being able to innovate with all of the folks up here and out there.
And just, I'm from Los Angeles. My mother was an educator in Los Angeles Unified School District for 40 years. I failed out of my first 4 attempts at college. Cal State Northridge, UCLA, BYU, 2 straight semesters. Got letters from places saying that they were going to invite me to step away from college. It was because of some mentor who said, why don't you join a multicultural dance group and learn the dances of your heritages, that started a winning streak. And as I teach in the School of Education now, I tell my students, the students will remember you more for how you made them feel in 2nd grade, in 6th grade, in 10th grade, more so than your powerful pedagogy. They will remember that you cared about them. And you are starting winning streaks in the lives of students who may be approaching your door having been through a losing streak. And so what I've found working at UVU now for 15 years and my own experience is somebody along the way keeps starting winning streaks. And I just love that part of what this dual mission is all about. Can you please join me in thanking this amazing panel?